Beginning in 1964, when the term action figure was first coined by Don Levine, we have seen numerous scaling and construction methods over the years. From the original 12-inch G.I. Joe through to the modern 6-inch highly posable action figures that are currently in production today. One of the more notable styles of figure construction is what is called an O-ring action figure. While the Hasbro GiJoe Joe A Real American Hero line is certainly the most prolific using this method, where did it actually begin? Please join me while we explore the history and evolution of the O-ring action figure. In 1964, Hasbro released the first G.I. Joe action soldier on the market. Inspired by the posability of the small wooden mannequins used by artists, Hasbro wisely made these figures highly articulated and detailed. The initial figure design utilized an elastic band to provide the tension needed for the articulation of the figure and to allow for it to hold poses. This strategy was what made G.I. Joe stand out in the toy aisle. Previously, any military or action-themed toys had simply been static depictions, such as die-cast metal soldiers or the ubiquitous green army men that lived in every toy box. Seeing the success of these toys, both Palitoy and Takara opted to license the figure design for marketing in other countries beyond the US. Due to differences in perception regarding the name G.I. Joe, Palitoy rebranded as Action Man and Takara as Combat Joe. The Combat Joe figure, however, was not popular among children in Japan, and Takara opted to rework the figure and name it the Henshin Cyborg. It utilized many of the same features as the original G.I. Joe figure, but had removable limbs that could be replaced with attachable weapons, and the body was molded in a see-through plastic. Due to the oil crisis in the late 1970s, it was wisely decided to shrink this figure down to 3 3/4 inches, as petroleum costs had risen considerably. This new version was dubbed Microman, and was the first to incorporate the traditional O-ring into its construction. The Microman line was then licensed to the Mego Corporation in the US and released under the name of Micronauts in 1976. The main gimmick of Micronauts were modular vehicles for the figures to interact with. Sections of each toy could be removed and combined with another toy from the same line to create new and exciting adventures for your Micronaut figures. These figures were extremely popular and were a top-selling item for Mego. The following year, George Lucas unveiled his magnum opus, Star Wars, upon an unsuspecting public. Having initially passed on the licensing rights for the Star Wars toys, Mego pursued licensing for what they considered to be similar properties. In 1979, Mego released toys for both Buck Rogers and the Black Hole, utilizing this same O-ring construction as the Micronauts line, as well as certain sculpting similarities. Banking on the additional articulation these figures had in comparison to Kenner's Star Wars figure line, Mego felt poised for success. But despite Mego's best design efforts, along with huge marketing campaigns, neither line ever met with even a fraction of the success of Kenner's Star Wars figures. The Mego Corporation eventually shuttered its doors in 1982 after considerable financial losses. In an interesting turn of events, the same year is when Hasbro released their revamped version of their G.I. Joe action figure line, redubbed as G.I. Joe A Real American Hero. These new figures incorporated the same O-ring construction that had been utilized previously in the various Mego figure lines. In what can be viewed as a circular evolution, the product that inspired these new G.I. Joe figures was itself inspired by the original incarnation of this same property. The G.I. Joe A Real American Hero line was in production until 1994, and in its lifetime produced over 500 different figures and 250 playsets and vehicles, some of these being what many collectors consider to be the pinnacle in playset and vehicle design. Recently, both Hasbro and various other boutique toy companies have begun revisiting this once popular figure construction method, but with an evolved, more modern take, such as alternate heads and hands. One can only hope that this renaissance will be embraced more and more to supplement our existing collections. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video. Please take the time to like and subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell to receive notifications on future videos. If you would like to see similar content, please visit the linked videos here. And as always, see you next time on Plastic Recollections.